Hello, children of God, and welcome to our celebration of 120 years of our life as a loving parish community here at Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish in Appleton, Wisconsin. In our 120 years, we have seen sorrows of fire, sorrows of school closings, and the old school building being razed. We have seen the joys of church rebuildings, church remodelings, and school building remodelings to meet the needs of growing staff, youth space, library space, gathering space for fellowship, serving the needs of our ministries, and our commitment to educate our children in their faith. But these sorrows and joys are only buildings that house our devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The real presence of our heart beats strongly in our people. We are a parish of loyal and faithful people. Many of our families were cradle Sacred Heart Catholics, measuring their time here in decades and generations with warm and welcoming hearts, eager to meet and to get to know our visitors and new members. So come on in, leave your burdens at the door, and experience living life here at Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish, where you will find that you are more than friends, we are family.
My great-grandpa came from Holland, fought in the Civil War, and then came over to Appleton. When he got here, he was building a house, and the priest came by and said, "Hey, I'm building a church. You want to help me?" He said, "I'll help you as soon as I get done building my house." They tried over on a lot by Riverview Lutheran Church twice to build a Sacred Heart. Both times it blew down. So the third time they bought the Methodist Church on the corner of Monroe and Harrison Street. They took over that church, and then that church was their church until 1950. They built another church on the corner of, well, where it is now, on Monroe and Fremont Street. And they used the old church as a gym for 2 years. In 1952, the gym burned down, or the old Methodist church burned down.
My memories of Sacred Heart Church and School in Appleton are of the years 1950 to 1958. They begin with the disastrous fire in 1951 of the old church building on the corner of Monroe and Harrison Streets.
And they used the old church as a gym for 2 years. In 1952, the gym burned down, or the old Methodist church burned down. And with the help of Wisconsin Energies, they rebuilt it and made it into a gym with a cafeteria underneath. The old building, we all went to school there. It was pretty cold over there. And the new building, it still stands today. The old school building is gone. Back in the 1990s, they took it down. It was 100 years old when we took it down. So that's the buildings.
In first grade in the old school facing Harrison Street, my first grade teacher was Sister Marianella, and all her students loved her and thought of her as a saint. I still remember the creaky wood floors of the school and the cupola on the top of the building, where it was rumored that a mysterious nun monitored recess, since the nuns always seemed to know what went on at recess. It was much later rumored that the nun was actually a dressmaker's mannequin with a school sister of Notre Dame habit on. In second grade, we made our first confession and communion. I remember the girls' white and the boys' black First Communion Missal and Rosary sets, and being enrolled in the confraternity of the Brown Scapular, which I wear today.
We're the only two priests that ring a bell. Our Monsignor Schmidt and Staudemeyer.
When I think of Staudemeyer, I think of, I don't know how you get this back in order. I think of every time we saw, oh, here's a Wilson gang for West Wilson Street. And then we lost his son, and he came to the house with communion. I guess we had him quite a few years. We had so many priests over that many years, I can't even think of them all.
We were pretty close. Monsignor Schmidt was here back in the 50s and 60s. And he liked Christmas music so much that he was the first guy that I ever known that played Christmas music over the bell tower in the middle of July.
We got married there. We got married in the old church. No, we got married in the new church, but we had our dance in the old church.
Okay.
So it was supposed to be for certain hours. But Senior must have got ugly about something, and he said,
So you had your reception in the old church and then it burnt down?
that was because we disobeyed Father's. He rapped on the door, and at that time the priest house was that big white house on that street.
Okay.
Church like that. And Carl,
Across the street.
you got the church street in front of the church, and then you got the one like this, and it was a big thing. It was a convent at one time.
Yes, okay.
He rapped on the door, and then the guy answers. He's got a white T-shirt on. He says, "What do you want?" Carl says, "Well, I have an appointment for instructions for the Catholic faith. I'm supposed to see Father Stoudemire." He says, "Yeah, well, you're looking at him." And that blew his mind because he thought he should have the black robe on and the white collar.
Well, there was a Father Nichols was here.
He was the one that registered us, Father Nichols.
Father Nichols. Oh.
And he actually was, I think, from the Stockbridge area.
Well, he was never the pastor here, but he was.
He registered us when
Father Stoudemire for
Edison.
quite a while, Father Edison.
Father
Yeah.
Nichols. Father Nichols was kind of a difficult person. I got to love the guy after I became Catholic. Before I became Catholic, he didn't like me because I wasn't going to confirmation classes on Wednesday night because I wasn't Catholic. And I hung around with all the kids.
Religious ed?
Religious
Religious
ed,
ed,
it
yeah.
wasn't confirmation.
And he says he was going to throw me out one time because after that we had played the gym and all that stuff.
Play basketball.
Yeah, with confirmation, we swung through the So
I think back then they called it CCD.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
CCD on Wednesday night.
Mhm.
And it was citywide. All the Catholic churches had CCD on Wednesday
Mhm.
night.
Yeah, so I got very attached to 1960.
Oh, okay.
I took classes from Father Bedison and Father Bain because I was finally in love with this beautiful lady that was Catholic. So I took instructions at Sacred Heart in 1960. And in 1960, I was baptized Catholic. I was confirmed Catholic in 1960. And I met my beautiful wife. No, but Father Bob Caroon was one that come closer to our hearts. And,
Yeah.
we went to Medjugorje and mission groups with him, and it was just phenomenal. He became like just one of our family, so more so than just a priest. He was one of our family. So he's the one that instigated my son-in-law Dan to become a deacon, and then we got Kelly involved with the church. Now she's been there about 19. She said 19 years already. I thought, oh my goodness, what an impact he has played in our family. And
Good things. Very good things.
And another one I always go to Father Stoudemire because Pete, you'd be a good-looking kid to get in my face. And then he'd say, then if I did see him walking down, I'd say, "Hey, fatso," okay, remember him saying that?
Yeah.
You'd be good
That was
looking kid to be at my
Stoudemire.
face. And I know.
I was always a squirrel.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Golden in there, I remember him.
Golden came later, I think.
Yeah, and he went around in all the homes and blessed all the homes when he was here.
Wow. So Father Golden came to the different homes and blessed them?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Father Leon was, I remember some of his homilies too. He'd have a big thing around his neck, a piece of paper. He said, every time I say blah, 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 he'd take a piece of paper and he'd tear it off and he'd throw it on the altar. And then one time he had a bunch of balloons, he was passing balloons down through the, and people
He did different
He did
things.
different things and people weren't happy with some of that.
The one that I remember, the
Homilies.
homilies that he had was, it was at Christmas time. And I think I was like 3rd or 4th grade, and he called 2 kids up to the front. He had a really small package, and he had a really big package. And he said, "Who is the youngest out of you 2?" And the one said, "I'm the youngest." And he said, "Okay, you get to pick which package you want." So the older one, he goes, "Look at already, he's already fussing because he knows she picked the big one." And everybody wants to have the big gift, don't they? But where the gift is, sweetheart, and he gave her the box, he goes, "It's in the small packages. Open it up. What do you find in there?" And she goes, a piece of furry stuff. He goes, "That's a warm fuzzy." I want you all to go home and give warm fuzzies to people and start loving each other.
Yeah.
What a surprise.
Yeah, I do remember that, yeah. Oh, yes, I know her dad, Jan's dad, was pretty critical about stuff
Well,
like that.
people
What the heck
of
is
the
he-
older generation,
Yeah.
didn't accept those kind of things. Change.
Love thy neighbor, he said, pass the balloon on, so you pat the balloon back.
Yeah,
So-
it was the decade of peace and love.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that was the same time they started the guitar mass.
yeah.
We've had a lot of priests come through our church. At one time, we had 4 to 5 priests here. So if a priest took a vacation, no one would know he was gone. But with Father Don and Father John, if they leave for a week or even a couple of days, we know that they're gone. We didn't do a real lot with St. Elizabeth Hospital, except for we shared servers. If they needed servers, they'd come over to Sacred Heart and grab us. They had a chapel at St. Elizabeth Hospital back in the 50s and 60s. So I would serve over there, and then they would give us free lunch or free breakfast, depending upon the time of the day. They started their masses at 5:30 in the morning. But that was for all the sisters that worked there, and anybody that wanted, to get up that early to go to Mass. So.
In 4th grade, I started learning the Mass server prayers in Latin, and as a rookie server was assigned the 5 a.m. daily Mass. I remember the Mass mainly because I had a 12-block walk to church before Mass, a 12-block walk back after Mass, and then a 12-block walk back to school. But it was a privilege to serve for Fathers Emil Schmidt, later Monsignor, Father Wilbur Staudemeyer, Father Jerome Watry, and Father Leander Nickel. As an aside, I recently read on an internet search that Father Nickel was still alive in 2015 in Green Bay. Then I earned assignment of other masses, with the plum mass assignments being the solemn Christmas and Easter session celebrations. The altar boy picnics at the end of the school year up in Door County were also special rewards for serving.
Yeah, I'd asked the question, do you know who started perpetual adoration? And it was here at Sacred Heart, originally. Father Emil Schmidt started the perpetual adoration chapel. It wasn't a chapel, it was in church. And but he had it here first. And it came about because of Christ in his passion, when he said to his apostles, I'm going over to pray, stay awake for 1 hour. And he came back and found them sleeping. He said, couldn't you stay awake 1 hour for me? That's the basis for it. That's the basis for it.
Now they have it for one day a week.
Oh no.
They have it every day.
Some places you can leave if your partner doesn't show up to take over. You can close up the monsters and put it away.
Other things I remember are Tuesday night 10 p.m. perpetual adoration hours with my mother, who had a lot to pray for with 3 sons.
In the morning, take the wheelchair with Mama in her. Hey, she was dedicated to it.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, if you got done with it, it made you feel very relaxed. You thought, boy, I done something decent for a change or something. I thought we still got it. She loves it. I take her.
Oh, I love
her.
going
Do this 3 in the afternoon. There's only 4 of us in there then. But that's most of them. Some of them only even have 2. One
Right.
time I was the only person there. I stayed 2 hours in because you don't like to abandon the Lord,
Right.
No, I mean, really,
In fact, it was the day there was a gentleman years ago named Norman Weinberger. You hear that name?
I heard the name. I don't know the man.
He had the gift of healing. He gave a stigmata, and Father Bill would always put put me in the room with him when we were on retreat together.
Oh.
He wanted me to keep people away from him because people were just.
Want him to come and help
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Okay.
So we were in the
I couldn't drink or eat nothing so many hours prior to communion. And, we got married. I had to get up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't eat nothing 4 hours before we got married. So my sister called me out and said, Keith, you got to get out of something. To make it so nice with an empty stomach, you'll pass all that office. So those changes have really been something, Yeah.
Those are good
You
changes.
you don't even touch the host now. You play distributor to distributor. Those, you put it in the palm of your hand and
You put it in
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Quite the
Good
changes
things.
over the past years. And when I first became Catholic, then we knelt at the altar.
But anyhow, it was hard because I had shoes that the soles wore out from all that walking, and my mother had gotten age-dependent children, so the old witch children came out to my mother said, I think Eileen needs new shoes. The woman says, well, the tops are good, put cardboard in them.
Oh my.
The mother put cardboard in before I go to school, the nuns would put some in before
Oh, we go home. Yes.
But First Communion, my mother had to kind of go around the neighborhood to find a veil for me. She bought a dress, but she couldn't. So Mrs. Kraft on Jefferson Street, she gave me a veil. But it was a kind of like a bonnet that goes over your head. And at that time, believe it or not, I was little, so I was called Little Eileen. Well, naturally, when I sat down, I sat on it. Well, this nun had it in her head that, I don't know if you're familiar with children or not, but had it in her head that we were not to move. For that whole hour, we were just sit there, like little robots.
I'm a teacher. I know that.
Well,
that's
every
not
time I
possible.
sat down, that darn thing would want to come off, so I would be straight there. The next day, she got me in front of the whole class and she said, you all get an A, but Casper, she gets F for wiggling all the time. Forget to trying to tell her, why I was wiggling. I was doing shoes. So I thought she was a bully. I was always getting scolded.
Right.
I know she resented it because we were so poor.
Right.
Or what? But on the other hand, in 5th grade, I had, Sister Winifred. She was an angel.
Everybody loved Winifred. She was very old when I got
She was very old. We all felt that. That's why she was crabby sometimes. Very crabby and grumpy, but we figured, well, she was old. It was her age. She was a little sweetheart. I have good memories of her.
What made her special?
Well, if we got scolded, we all got scolded together.
Okay.
If she was very exacting about stuff. And I remember, like, the Boy Scouts came in one day and they were all giggling, trying to figure out why. Well, it turned out that Sister Wilford had put the flag away and she put it away upside down. And that's what one of them says, Sister Willie must have put that one away. She was just all around good.
Stood out.
Mrs. Yankee, we loved her.
She had solar Christmas trees.
Yeah. And Mrs. Yankee.
Oh, Mrs. Young.
And she liked her kids.
Yeah. Well, she was one of those teachers that was able to let everybody feel special.
The nuns that were here were Notre Dame nuns, and they were here from the start until 1980s, 1990s. I can remember when they would say the rosary, they'd walk around the church on the sidewalks, and they would pray the rosary, and they'd single file walk. I always kidded my mother about the penguins are walking around the church, and then she'd say, "You're going to go to hell for that." So we had a lot of fun around Sacred Heart here. I was born and raised 1 block away, so.
I had 7 of my 8 years of classes with nuns and 1 year with a lay teacher, Mrs. Yankee. Most of the classes had about 50 students in them. Those school sisters of Notre Dame could really maintain discipline. Remember, this was at a time when the public schools in the area, such as McKinley, could expel students, and they often ended up at Sacred Heart. My 8 years at Sacred Heart School prepared me well academically for high school and college, and religiously for life. We even learned and practiced Robert's Rules of Order to prepare us for life in a democracy. There were over 500 students at Sacred Heart when I was in first grade, and almost 1,000 when I graduated from 8th grade.
Which children came out to, my mother said, I think Eileen needs new shoes. The woman says, well, the tops are good, put cardboard in them.
Oh my.
The mother put cardboard in before I go to school, the nuns would put them in before.
Oh, they could go home, yes.
But I remember they had bazaars in those days or something, and the big room seemed awful big to me.
Right.
So
I was always a Catholic,
Okay.
and when my parents moved to the corner of Maple and Carpenter Street back in June of 1942, I was a baby, and they joined the parish. So I have been a member, always loved our parish. Knew many people from the south side, and our classrooms in grade school, I went through 1st through 8th grade at Sacred Heart, and we had large numbers of children in the classrooms at that time, and we had probably 2 or 3 grades because there were so many children. Always enjoyed being there. I remember my first grade teacher, Sister Marianella, and I loved her. And Mrs. Yankee was the teacher in 5th grade.
Yes.
And Sister Francis was in 3 and 4. I had a combo class then. And Sister Marola was the principal when I was in 8th grade. And Sister Francis taught 7th grade then too at that time. So I enjoyed my grade school years at Sacred Heart very much. So Betty and I, Carol Miller is another classmate. Trying to think there was anybody else. Joanne Swerd, yeah.
Oh, I remember that name too.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year you graduated was? It was 1956.
56. From 8th grade.
From 8th grade.
Times around here at Sacred Heart, a lot of the kids were a little bit rambunctious, and I don't see how those sisters ever put up with us, but they did.
How was school? How did you were upstairs and
School started at first grade and went to the 8th grade, and the old school housed all the 1 through 5 or 6th grades, and then the 7th and 8th grades had the new school, and eventually they all came over to the new school once they tore down the old building. So when you went to school at Sacred Heart, you always started out with Mass in the morning, and then we would go to our classes. But we were told to go to confession once a week. So if you didn't think you sinned at all, you had to make something up. And the priest listened to that pretty good. They had a lot of chuckles. One time I told the priest, yeah, I killed my brother. He says, you didn't kill your brother. I said, well, I wanted to. He said, well, that's good enough. That's a sin. So...
Hot lunches at school were my favorite was Friday pancakes because the Fridays were meatless. And CYO basketball games in the gym.
Some of my regrets were that when I had to go to school and the Catholic kids got off because of the holy day, and I had to go to school, and I had to walk a mile home for lunch and a mile back after lunch to go back to McKinley School. The kids at Sacred Heart had hot lunch, and they never had to walk too far to go to hot lunch.
We were special.
We were really special kids at Sacred Heart, but there was one special kid at Sacred Heart, and that was the one I ended up marrying. So
I think
yeah,
so.
Beautiful bride. So.
Hand him some Kleenex.
Yeah.
Cub Scouts, Carol Miller and I were den mothers, and I was also involved with Girl Scouts. So those activities, it was me, and I just felt they were important and they should come first.
You found too that the Girl Scout and Boy Scout troops, like Sacred Heart had 3 Boy Scout troops, and they had 2 Girl Scout troops. And one time they did have 3, but they went down to 2. Now they're down to none.
Really?
Yes.
I remember the second one. I was scouting after Troop 93.
Services were included in when they had activities outside, like when we went to camp. Mrs. Kozlinski and Mrs. Waller, who were my leaders, made sure that we had a service of some sort at camp.
say the Holy Name, and the Christian mothers got together with Father, you know, well, what do we want to do? And we would all express an opinion, you know, what we should do. And how can we make more money, you know?
Right.
That's about all we really want.
Very nice.
Yeah, we had some pretty good money makers going for a while.
As a child, I remember how fun the picnics were.
Sure.
And how it was a full family activity.
Yeah, and there wasn't another money maker we had was these parish dances.
Yeah.
We'd have them in
the gym.
The gym.
Yeah.
They had classrooms in there at one time.
In the gym, because
Sure.
we had overflow of kids. We had to turn away some kids because there wasn't room in the classes for them.
Right. So they had classrooms in there, but we'd get a band. Oh.
Father Stoudemire, what were some of the things that you remember about Father Stoudemire?
Well, he was very much in favor or wanting to work with the poor. He had his government surplus products that he made available to people that needed them, and his gardens were a big thing that families did.
Yeah.
And you see some of the other things that he did. He was always concerned about the poor. Those
The
less fortunate.
Meals on Wheels.
Yes.
He started that program. I see that you and Keith actually were walking in his footsteps too, or right behind him, doing similar things with the program you work with.
St. Vincent de Paul.
That's something special for Sacred Heart. What does that mean to Sacred Heart, St. Vincent de Paul?
Sacred Heart is one of the parishes that started the Apple District Council, started by Sacred Heart.
Was that about the same time they had the big food co-op?
Yeah.
That Father Stoudemire started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I remember working in the co-op.
Jacob's grocery store.
Yes, the Jacob's grocery store.
Yeah.
They stored a lot of product there.
Oh yeah. I remember going there helping unload those trucks.
Yes.
Chunky cheese and it gets a lot.
But social justice, we are a big church of social justice. Out of Sacred Heart came the St. Joe's Food Pantry and the St. Vincent de Paul. The St. Vincent de Paul was started, Monsignor Schmidt did not want to have it because it was recognized men's group, and the whole men's group went over to the St. Vincent de Paul and worked out of here. We were the first St. Vincent de Paul church. We had our own thing north of Milwaukee. There was nothing in the area, and from us sprang all the other St. Vincent de Paul areas. We were very key intimate in the Habitat for Humanity, where we help buildings. Mary Beth Newhouse does a lot with that. And we also did a lot with the warming shelter.
You have just heard a few voices of this church. Some are members and some are past members. We have seen happy times, sad times, and troubled times. The church's voice is not as loud as in the past because of the membership decline. But one thing stays the same: the church and its history. We thank you for being part of the great history of Sacred Heart.
Bride married her in 1960 out at Sacred Heart. So I have a fond memories of Sacred Heart, 1960 on.
It's always been home.
It's always been home to me.
Thank you, Sacred Heart, for the memories.